If you're feeling tired all the time, you could be suffering from a dopamine burnout. Your dopamine system is not designed to be firing all the time. And the more of those fun activities you do, meaning the more of those dopamine firing activities you do, the lower your dopamine levels will become. If you don't understand how your body works, how the dopamine system works, and get the tools to change this around, you could be facing burnout for the rest of your life, meaning you won't be able to enjoy life, you won't have the same level of energy, drive, and motivation. And let's get honest, if you really want to perform at the highest levels, hit your goals, and enjoy life, you need to get this right. Know how you feel after a great party when you're feeling really hungover and low on energy, low on motivation, and life could almost feel meaningless, right? It's not only alcohol speaking here, it's also a lack of dopamine. When you're doing all that fun stuff, your body is just firing dopamine, and that depletes your dopamine levels. Have you ever had a super fun weekend and then Monday just feels so dull, so gray, so meaningless, and you're low on energy? Or maybe you went on a vacation and you had the time of your life, and after that, everything was just, It's your dopamine system speaking. When you're producing a lot of dopamine, there will be a dopamine deficiency. So let's dive into what dopamine really is, how it works, so that you get a better understanding of what is really driving you here. Let's look at dopamine from an evolutionary perspective. You need to understand what is really driving you, because dopamine is the driving factor behind so many things in your life. And let's be honest, isn't the feeling you get when you're high on dopamine one of the best feelings ever? I bet you're addicted to dopamine on some level. And you know what? We all are. We're all addicted to dopamine. Dopamine is our brain's highest valued currency. Our brains are crazy after dopamine, and actually we do whatever it takes in order to get more dopamine. So dopamine is a neuromodulator, and the reason why we enjoy so much dopamine is that, well, Mother Nature evolved us and evolved this fantastic thing called dopamine in order to create. And create what? You might be asking yourself, well, what is it that Mother Nature wanted to create when she made up dopamine? Dopamine is there to give you energy, drive, and actually to move your body. Actually movement, so that you can move your body. So you have energy and drive and the ability to move towards your goals. We enjoy dopamine when we are moving towards our goals. When there's a promise of something new and better, everything that glitters, all that gold, all that new stuff, all the exciting stuff, that fires off dopamine. When we expect something and whatever we get is higher than that expectation, even more dopamine will fire. When you reach your goal, yes, there will be dopamine, although not as much dopamine as you get when you're moving towards your goal. A lot of people think that dopamine is the reward molecule, and in some way it is, because yes, you do get a reward when you hit your goal. You do get a reward of dopamine. It's just that this reward isn't that big compared to the amount of dopamine you enjoy when you're moving towards your goal. And this is really important for you to understand, because a lot of people are so fixated on the goal. When I get to that goal, when I reach this goal, then I'll be happy, then everything will be great, then I will be able to enjoy all those good feelings. And it's not true. When you hit your goal, your body fires off a certain amount of dopamine in order to reward you. And the purpose of this is that you will store the information of this as something important, something you will want to reproduce and do again in order to give you motivation to do again at a later point. It does this. It's also connected to neuroplasticity. When dopamine is firing, it helps the neuroplasticity. So new pathways will be stored in your brain. So let's say that one of our ancestors was walking on the savannah and suddenly saw a bush of really delicious red berries. The dopamine system would fire, right? And it would fire because the red berries are important to survival. It means sugar, energy, and it's important to survival. And it is important that our ancestors remembered where this bush was and that it was important, and that they would remember to look out for a similar bush in the future. So dopamine fires in order to help our brain preserve that learning. And then after that, there's no more dopamine, because dopamine is there in order to give you energy and drive and to move your body in order to get to your goal. And imagine this, our ancestors, a couple of million years ago, resources were scarce. We had to be constantly on the lookout for more resources, more energy, food, and everything that was important for our survival. So what would it look like if one of our ancestors, maybe went out hunting and finally got that deer, dopamine fired? What would it look like if the dopamine system just continued to fire? Our ancestor would probably not be so motivated to go out again on a 2-day hunt to get more meat, right? Our ancestors would be so happy and satisfied with all that dopamine, just enjoying those good feelings. So the survival of the human species has depended on our constant need for more dopamine. It has depended on the lack of dopamine, the eagerness to go out there and reach more of our goals, because we can't just reach one goal and live happily ever after on that amount of dopamine. It doesn't work like that. The system is not designed like that. And when you understand why we have the dopamine system, that it's there in order to move you towards your goal, not to keep you in your goal and nice and warm, fuzzy feelings forever, because our human species would not be here today if we could enjoy that feeling of dopamine forever. It just doesn't work like that. Okay, there's still ways where you can optimize your dopamine levels and really enjoy a lot of dopamine and have fun and have energy and be balanced and enjoy life when you understand how the system works. So this is super, super important information. Let me recap. Your dopamine system is designed to give you energy, drive, and to move your body in order for you to reach your goals. When you reach your goals, there will be a squirt of dopamine and then it's over. Then there's no more dopamine. The reason for that being that the human species would not survive if we were all just living happily ever after in a sea of dopamine. It just doesn't work like that. So we need to put that concept aside and understand that dopamine doesn't last. It's there for a reason. And when we understand the reason and when we understand how the whole system works, we'll be able to optimize it. So what gives us the drive to go out and seek to accomplish our goals? It's a lack of dopamine, and it's our eagerness to get more dopamine. This is the driving force. So we have at a certain point always an amount of dopamine in our bodies, and the level of dopamine is different. Some people are more low on dopamine naturally, and some people are naturally higher on dopamine. I'm sure you've met those people who are just so energized. They seem like they're high on something and they're so happy and they're just like creative and they're just like moving all the time and so much energy. And those are naturally high on dopamine. And we're not all like that. We're all different, and that's fine. You have your level, I have mine level. We all have our level, and that's fine. That's how we are designed. The problem occurs when we do a lot of activities that fire the dopamine system, because that will lower our baseline of dopamine. And okay, so you're probably thinking, so what fires of the dopamine system? Well, there are a lot of things, and even the things that we've been thinking are good for us. I used to think that the more I did of the fun stuff, the more I set goals, reached my goals, did challenging stuff, and the more I did of that, the better my life would be. And I think that's how we've been taught to think, right? That more equals more. This is actually not true when it comes to the dopamine system. When you do more of all that fun stuff, you will fire off dopamine, and it leaves you with less dopamine in the system. And I didn't understand that, because I used to be focused on reaching all my goals and constantly setting new goals for a new trip, a new business goal, personal goal. There was constantly stuff happening. I was moving towards goals constantly. And I'm not saying it's wrong. We just need to balance it out in order to maintain levels of energy, motivation, and joy. Because life is about enjoying life, isn't it? I'm sure you're here because you do want to reach your goal, you do want to perform at the highest level, and you do want to have fun doing it. I mean, we've been given this one life. Why waste it on hard work and not having fun? You can do both. I mean, you can reach your goals, you can perform at the highest level, and you can have fun when you learn how to balance out your dopamine levels. So more isn't more. More doesn't lead to more. I filled my calendar with all those dopamine firing activities. I was base jumping, I was traveling, I was setting really fun goals and reaching them. And I was traveling the world. I was doing so much stuff that fired off the dopamine system, and I wasn't getting any happier. And I wondered why. Okay, so I'll let you in on the secret of why it doesn't make you more happy. First of all, what is it that fires off the dopamine system? Well, there are a lot of things. It can be scrolling, it can be shopping, it can be pornography, gaming, alcohol, food, traveling, exercise, going to that gym with loud music and instructor yelling out and amping up your system. You go, woo! That also fires off your dopamine system. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that we need to be conscious about how much of that we put into our lives without replenishing the dopamine system. Every time there's a message on your phone or the phone rings or something pops up on your screen, dopamine fires. All the ads you're presented to every day, dopamine fires. You're listening to the radio, you're scrolling online. There's constantly stuff that is firing off your dopamine system, and it will burn you out if you don't take control of it. Let's look at it as a wave pool. You know those pools where they have waves and the kids are playing and having fun? The more waves there are in the wave pool, the more water will go overboard. And what happens to the baseline level of the pool? Well, it will decrease, right? There will be less and less water in the pool. So the more waves and the bigger waves, the more water will splash out and the level in the pool will decrease. There will be less water. And it's the same for your dopamine system. You have a pool of dopamine, and the more you do of those high dopamine activities, even though there are great activities, even though it's fun, and even though doing fun stuff is really important to us because it does create a lot of the good emotions, which are super important for motivation and health and energy and all that stuff. It's just a balance. We can't rely solely on the dopamine producing activities because it will lower the baseline level of dopamine. And you're probably thinking, but then what? What do I do? Because I love doing fun stuff. And should I stop doing fun stuff? Or how do I lose the dopamine forever? No, okay, you don't. The body will constantly replenish its levels of dopamine. It just won't be able to replenish those dopamine levels if there's never a break, if the dopamine system doesn't get a break, okay? So in order to actually make sure that you replenish those systems, you need to give your system a break. You need to take a break from your main dopamine producing activities. And a lot of people speak about dopamine detox and that you need to stay away from dopamine 100% of the time. That's not possible, okay? So just forget about that. You can't do 100% dopamine detox. It doesn't work. You need dopamine in order to wake up and get out of bed in the morning. There will be dopamine in your system, and there should be dopamine in your system. What I'm speaking about is taking a break from the highest, most dopamine producing activities and make sure you replenish the system in between. And what does replenish your dopamine system? Well, you have sleep, fantastic pill, which will just vamp up your dopamine system. There's rest. Yoga Nidra is one of the techniques I personally use every single day. Research shows that when you use Yoga Nidra, which is a kind of relaxation, and you can just go online and Google and find lots of free Yoga Nidra resources. You lie down or sit, you listen to an audio file, and they are designed in a way that takes you down into deep brain brain waves really quickly, and this is where your body can replenish the dopamine systems. Being outside, seeing sunlight, moving, just taking care of your body. All those things are important to replenish your dopamine system. And in the end, we're speaking about maintaining a balance. When you know that you have a full-on day with meetings, maybe they're exciting meetings, maybe you're hosting an event or doing a keynote, there's lots of energy out, there will be high levels of stress and dopamine, and it's important that you plan for some downtime afterwards and not just hit the next dopamine activity straight after that, okay? So you can still enjoy all of that fun stuff, you just need to balance it out. Make sure you sleep enough. Make sure you do some yoga nidra or meditation or whatever. Make sure you go for walks, see some sunlight, breathe, be in nature, and just take a break. When you do that, the level in your pool of dopamine will increase and you will be able to perform at your highest level, hit those goals, and still enjoy life and have lots of energy, motivation, and drive at the same time.